The morning mist clung to the surface of Lake Kepler like a ghostly shroud as Marcus Chen adjusted his fishing gear on the rocky shoreline. 3 months into humanity's first colonial expedition to Proxima 7, the lake had become his refuge from the endless meetings and technical reports that filled his days as the colony's xenobiologist. The water stretched for miles, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple from some unseen aquatic life form. Marcus had discovered early in the mission that the dawn hours offered the best opportunity for solitude. Most of the 200 colonists were still sleeping in the prefabricated habitation modules scattered across the valley floor. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of waves against the shore and the distant hum of atmospheric processors working tirelessly to make this alien world more hospitable for human lungs. He cast his line into the crystal-clear water, watching the bioluminescent lure disappear into the depths. The native fish here were unlike anything from Earth, with translucent bodies that seemed to glow from within. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the marine biologist, had cataloged 17 different species in just the past week, each more fascinating than the last. But Marcus wasn't fishing for specimens today. He was fishing for peace of mind. The morning silence shattered with a tremendous splash from the center of the lake. Marcus jerked his head up, searching the water's surface for the source of the disturbance. At first, he saw nothing but expanding concentric circles rippling outward from a point roughly 200 meters from shore. Then, something broke the surface, crashing wildly in what was clearly distress. Marcus squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The creature appeared to be roughly the size of a large dog, but its movements were all wrong for any aquatic lifeform he'd encountered on Proxima 7. As it struggled in the water, he caught glimpses of spotted fur and what looked like powerful limbs designed for land locomotion rather than swimming. Without hesitation, Marcus dropped his fishing rod and began stripping off his jacket and boots. The universal translator embedded in his neural implant wasn't picking up any coherent communication from the struggling creature, but distress was a language that transcended species barriers. Something was drowning out there, and every instinct he possessed as both a scientist and a human being demanded that he act. The water was shockingly cold as Marcus dove in, his body immediately protesting the temperature difference. Proxima 7's twin suns provided warmth during the day, but the nights were long and frigid, leaving the lake perpetually chilled. He pushed through the discomfort, his strong strokes carrying him quickly toward the thrashing figure in the distance. As he drew closer, Marcus could see that his initial assessment had been correct. The creature was definitely terrestrial in design, with a lean, muscular build covered in a coat of golden fur marked with distinctive black rosettes. Its head was distinctly feline, with prominent ears and a powerful jaw, but larger than any leopard from Earth. Most striking were its eyes, which held an unmistakable intelligence that seemed to recognize Marcus as a potential rescuer rather than a threat. The alien leopard was clearly exhausted from its struggle against the water. Its movements were becoming weaker and more desperate with each passing second. Marcus could see that despite its obvious strength and agility on land, this creature was as helpless in deep water as any land mammal would be. Whatever had driven it into the lake, it was now paying the price for its miscalculation. Marcus reached the drowning creature just as its head began to slip beneath the surface for what might have been the final time. He wrapped one arm around its torso, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the wet fur, and began swimming back toward shore with desperate efficiency. The alien was heavier than he'd expected, and its panic-driven struggles made the rescue attempt dangerous for both of them. "Easy, easy," Marcus gasped, hoping his tone would convey reassurance even if his words meant nothing to the creature. "I've got you. Just relax and let me do the work." To his amazement, the alien seemed to understand his intent if not his words. The struggling subsided, and Marcus felt the creature's body go limp with exhausted trust. This level of intelligence and emotional recognition was remarkable, suggesting a cognitive capacity that rivaled or perhaps exceeded that of Earth's great apes. The swim back to shore felt endless. Marcus's lungs burned from the exertion, and his muscles screamed in protest as he fought against the combined weight of his passenger and the lake's relentless cold. But, gradually, mercifully, the rocky shore grew larger in his vision. His feet finally touched bottom in the shallows, and he half-carried, half-dragged the unconscious alien leopard onto dry land. Both of them collapsed on the rocky beach, Marcus gasping for air while the alien lay motionless beside him. For a terrifying moment, Marcus thought he might have been too late. But, then, the creature's chest began to rise and fall in a steady rhythm, and its eyes fluttered open to fix on his face with an expression of unmistakable gratitude. Marcus sat up slowly, his body shaking from cold and exhaustion. He reached for his jacket, intending to use it to warm both himself and his unexpected patient. But, as he moved, the alien leopard suddenly struggled to its feet with remarkable speed and agility for a creature that had been unconscious moments before. Instead of fleeing into the forest as Marcus had expected, the alien turned to face him. It lowered its head in what seemed to be a gesture of acknowledgement, its golden eyes never leaving his face. Then, to Marcus's complete astonishment, it began to move back toward the water's edge, pausing frequently to look back at him with obvious expectation. Marcus followed slowly, his scientific curiosity overriding his exhaustion. The alien was trying to communicate something, that much was clear. It approached a particular section of the shoreline where the rocks formed a natural jetty extending into the lake. Here, it stopped and began to make soft chirping sounds while staring intently into the water below. Peering over the edge, Marcus could see down through the crystal-clear water to what appeared to be the entrance to an underwater cave system. The opening was large enough for a human to swim through, but it disappeared into darkness beyond the reach of the morning light. As he watched, he began to notice something else that made his blood run cold. There were lights moving in the depths of that cave. Not the soft bioluminescence of the lake's native life forms, but the hard, geometric patterns of artificial illumination. Technology. And if there was technology down there, it meant intelligence. Possibly hostile intelligence. The alien leopard continued its urgent chirping, occasionally nudging Marcus's leg with its massive head. It was clearly trying to direct his attention to something specific about the underwater cave, but what? Was it warning him about danger, or asking for help with something inside? Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold lake water still dripping from his clothes. In his 3 months on Proxima 7, the colonists had found no evidence of sentient life beyond the various animal species they'd catalogued. The planet had seemed empty of technological civilization, a pristine world ready for human settlement. But, if there was an intelligent species living in underwater cities, if humanity had unknowingly established their colony on inhabited land, then everything would change. First contact protocols would have to be initiated. The colonial charter would be suspended pending full xenological evaluation. And, depending on the nature of the indigenous species, humanity might be facing anything from diplomatic negotiations to armed conflict. The alien leopard seemed to sense his growing alarm. It pressed closer to his side, its warm fur providing comfort against the morning chill. Despite the creature's obvious desire to communicate about the cave, there was also something protective in its posture. It positioned itself between Marcus and the water's edge, as if shielding him from whatever lay beneath the surface. Marcus reached out slowly and placed his hand on the alien's head, feeling the creature relax under his touch. Whatever was happening here, whatever secrets lay hidden in the depths of Lake Kepler, he knew that his life had just become infinitely more complicated. The simple morning fishing trip had turned into what might be humanity's first contact with an alien intelligence. As he stood there on the rocky shore, one hand resting on the golden fur of the creature he'd just saved, Marcus Chen realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The lights in the underwater cave continued their mysterious dance in the depths below, and, somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that he might have just stumbled onto the most important discovery in human history. The question was whether humanity was ready for what they were about to learn about their new homeworld, and whether the intelligence lurking beneath Lake Kepler would prove to be friend or foe. The alien leopard pressed closer against his leg, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his new companion knew far more about the answers to those questions than any creature should. The morning mist was beginning to lift from the lake's surface, and, in the growing light, Marcus could see more clearly into the depths of the underwater cave. What he saw there made his hands tremble as he reached for his communication device to contact the colony. The lights below weren't just moving randomly. They were forming patterns, complex geometric shapes that could only be the product of a sophisticated intelligence. And they were moving upward toward the surface, as if whatever created them had detected the disturbance at the water's edge and was coming to investigate. Marcus's hands shook as he activated his communication device, but before he could transmit anything to the colony, the alien leopard suddenly clamped its powerful jaws around his wrist. Not hard enough to break skin, but firmly enough to prevent him from completing the call. The creature's golden eyes stared into his with unmistakable intelligence and what appeared to be urgent warning. "You don't want me to call for help?" Marcus asked, knowing the alien couldn't understand his words but hoping his tone would convey the question. The leopard released his wrist and shook its head in a remarkably human-like gesture of negation. This level of communication was unprecedented in the xenobiological surveys conducted so far on Proxima 7. The lights from the underwater cave were definitely rising now, and Marcus could begin to make out shapes moving through the water with purpose and coordination. Whatever intelligence dwelt beneath Lake Kepler was responding to the surface disturbance, and his alien companion clearly believed that involving the human colony would be a catastrophic mistake. The leopard began to move away from the water's edge, pausing frequently to ensure Marcus was following. It led him to a cluster of large boulders that provided cover from both the lake and any potential observers from the direction of the colony. Once hidden among the rocks, the creature began a series of complex vocalizations and gestures that seemed designed to convey specific information. Marcus watched in fascination as the alien leopard used its powerful claws to scratch symbols into the soft soil between the rocks. The markings were crude but clearly representational. A circle representing the lake, smaller marks that seemed to indicate the human colony, and, beneath the water, a complex network of interconnected chambers and passages. "There's a whole city down there," Marcus whispered, studying the alien's rough map. "And you're trying to tell me something about it?" The leopard nodded again, then began scratching additional symbols. These were different, more ominous. Sharp angular shapes that seemed to represent some kind of technology or weaponry. Around the edges of the underwater city, the alien drew what looked like patrol routes or defensive perimeters. As Marcus studied the markings, a chill of understanding began to creep through him. This wasn't just a revelation about an indigenous intelligent species. His companion was warning him about something dangerous, something that posed a threat to both the human colonists and, apparently, to the leopard's own kind. The first figure broke the surface of the lake with barely a ripple. Marcus pressed himself lower behind the boulder, his heart racing as he got his first clear look at the intelligence that had been hidden beneath the peaceful waters of Lake Kepler. The being was humanoid in basic structure but adapted for aquatic life. Its skin had a translucent, pearl-like quality that seemed to shift between different shades of blue and green. Webbed hands and feet were clearly visible, along with what appeared to be gill slits along the elongated neck. Most striking were the eyes, which were proportionally much larger than human eyes and seemed to glow with their own inner light. More figures emerged from the lake, moving with fluid grace as they transitioned from water to land. Their movements were coordinated and purposeful, suggesting a high level of organization and intelligence. Each carried what was unmistakably a weapon of some kind, though the technology was unlike anything in human experience. Marcus felt the alien leopard tense beside him as one of the aquatic beings began to emit a series of complex sonic patterns. The universal translator in Marcus's neural implant struggled to process the alien language, providing only fragments of meaning. But what it did translate made his blood run cold. Surface contamination detected, eliminate biological witnesses, preserve colony integrity. These weren't peaceful first contact scenarios he was observing. The aquatic beings were discussing the elimination of anyone who had discovered their existence. And, based on their methodical search pattern as they spread out from the lake shore, they knew someone had been here during their emergence. The leopard pressed closer to Marcus, its warm body providing comfort as they watched the systematic search proceeding around the lake's perimeter. The alien creature's earlier warning now made perfect sense. If Marcus had successfully contacted the colony, he would have drawn hundreds of humans to this location just as these aquatic beings were demonstrating their hostile intent. One of the searchers was moving directly toward their hiding spot. Marcus could see now that the weapons they carried were some form of energy projector, with crystalline components that pulsed with the same inner light as their wielder's eyes. The technology level displayed was clearly far in advance of anything humanity possessed. The leopard suddenly stood and moved away from the boulder cluster, deliberately exposing itself to the approaching searcher. Marcus wanted to cry out a warning, but he understood the creature's strategy immediately. It was drawing attention away from his location, sacrificing its own safety to protect him. The aquatic being spotted the leopard immediately and raised its weapon. Energy crackled between the crystalline components as it prepared to fire. But, instead of the expected attack, something remarkable happened. The weapon's energy signature suddenly changed, and the being lowered it with what appeared to be recognition. Marcus watched in amazement as a communication occurred between the leopard and the aquatic searcher. The exchange was brief and conducted in sonic patterns that his translator couldn't process, but the body language was clear enough. The searcher was deferring to the leopard, treating it with obvious respect and even what might have been reverence. The aquatic being gestured toward the water, and the leopard shook its head firmly. Another exchange of sonic patterns followed, this one more heated. The searcher seemed to be insisting on something that the leopard was equally determined to refuse. Finally, with what appeared to be reluctant acceptance, the aquatic being turned and moved back toward the lake. Within minutes, all of the surface searchers had returned to the water and disappeared beneath the surface. The lake returned to its peaceful morning appearance, giving no hint of the advanced underwater civilization that lay beneath its depths. The leopard returned to Marcus's hiding spot, and, for the first time since the rescue, it seemed to relax. The immediate danger had passed, but Marcus's mind was reeling with the implications of what he'd witnessed. The creature had somehow convinced the aquatic beings to abandon their search, but at what cost? Using the same claw-scratching method as before, the leopard began to provide more detailed information about the situation. The symbols it drew told a story that was both fascinating and terrifying. The aquatic beings were apparently the original inhabitants of Proxima 7, but they weren't the planet's only intelligent species. According to the leopard's crude but effective visual narrative, the planet was home to multiple intelligent species that had learned to coexist by maintaining strict territorial boundaries. The aquatic beings controlled the lakes and oceans, while various land-based species, including the leopard's kind, maintained dominion over specific terrestrial regions. The arrival of human colonists had disrupted this delicate balance. The landing site chosen by Earth's survey teams happened to be located directly above one of the most important aquatic cities on the planet. Worse, the atmospheric processors and other human technology were apparently interfering with underwater systems that the aquatic beings considered vital to their survival. Marcus studied the aliens' drawings with growing alarm. If this information was accurate, then humanity had unknowingly committed an act of invasion that threatened the existence of an entire civilization. The aquatic beings weren't being randomly hostile, they were defending their home from what they perceived as an existential threat. But there was more to the story. The leopard's continued scratching revealed that its species served as intermediaries between the various intelligent factions on Proxima 7. They were natural diplomats, capable of communication with all the planet's sentient species and trusted by each to maintain the territorial agreements that prevented warfare. The leopard had been in the lake not by accident, but as part of an emergency diplomatic mission. It had been trying to reach the aquatic beings to negotiate some kind of solution to the human problem before the situation escalated to open conflict. Marcus's rescue had inadvertently interrupted this crucial mission, but it had also created an unprecedented opportunity. For the first time in the planet's history, one of the neutral diplomatic species had formed a direct bond with a member of the invasive human species. The leopard was now personally invested in finding a peaceful resolution that would protect both its human rescuer and the various indigenous civilizations of Proxima 7. As Marcus processed this information, he began to understand the enormous responsibility that had fallen onto his shoulders. He wasn't just a xenobiologist anymore. He had become humanity's only link to a complex network of alien civilizations, and the decisions he made in the coming hours could determine whether humanity's presence on Proxima 7 would end in peaceful coexistence or catastrophic war. The leopard moved closer and rested its massive head on Marcus's shoulder. The gesture was unmistakably affectionate, but also carried the weight of trust and expectation. This remarkable alien creature was asking him to help broker a peace between species that had no common language, no shared cultural references, and vastly different technological capabilities. Marcus looked out across the peaceful surface of Lake Kepler, knowing that beneath those calm waters lay a civilization that possessed the power to destroy the human colony whenever they chose. The only thing preventing that destruction was a promise made by an alien leopard that had apparently vouched for the character of one human being based on a single act of compassion. The morning sun was climbing higher in the sky, and soon the colony would begin to stir with the usual activities of a new day. But Marcus knew that this day would be unlike any other in human history. He was about to attempt something that would either establish humanity as a welcome member of a complex interplanetary community, or trigger the first interspecies war in human experience. The alien leopard stood and began moving toward the forest that bordered the lake. It paused at the tree line and looked back at Marcus with obvious expectation. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The creature that had become his closest friend and most trusted advisor in a matter of hours was preparing to lead him into the unknown. Marcus followed the alien leopard into the dense forest that surrounded Lake Kepler, his mind racing with the implications of everything he'd learned. The creature moved with silent grace through the undergrowth, occasionally pausing to ensure he was keeping pace. Their destination remained unknown, but Marcus trusted that his companion was leading him toward some form of solution to the crisis facing both humanity and the indigenous species of Proxima 7. The forest was unlike anything from Earth, with trees that seemed to shimmer with their own internal light and flowering vines that responded to their passage by changing color and pattern. But Marcus barely noticed the alien beauty surrounding him. His attention was focused on trying to devise a diplomatic strategy that could prevent the complete annihilation of the human colony. After nearly an hour of travel, the leopard led him to a clearing where the canopy opened to reveal a natural amphitheater formed by ancient stone formations. At the center of this space stood what was unmistakably a structure of intelligent design, though its purpose was unclear. Tall crystalline spires rose from a circular platform, each one pulsing with gentle bioluminescent patterns. The leopard approached the structure and placed one massive paw on the central platform. Immediately, the crystalline spires began to resonate with harmonic frequencies that Marcus could feel as much as hear. The universal translator in his neural implant suddenly burst to life with multiple simultaneous translation streams, suggesting that the device was receiving communications from various alien sources. "The human approaches the convergence point," came one translated voice. "The water dwellers speak of contamination and threat," said another. "The sky wanderers report unusual energy signatures from the metal colony," added a third. Marcus realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. The crystalline structure was some kind of communication hub that allowed the various intelligent species of Proxima 7 to maintain contact with each other. His leopard companion had brought him to the planet's equivalent of the United Nations, where representatives of different civilizations could meet and negotiate. As the harmonic frequencies intensified, Marcus began to see movement at the edges of the clearing. Figures emerged from the forest, each one representing a different species. Some were humanoid in appearance, others utterly alien in their morphology. But all moved with the purposeful intelligence of sentient beings who had come to address a crisis. The first to approach was one of the aquatic beings Marcus had seen at the lake, its translucent skin shimmering with patterns that seemed to convey emotional states. Following closely behind came a creature that could only be described as a living tree, its bark-like skin and branching limbs giving it the appearance of mobile vegetation. From above, descending on delicate wings that seemed almost ethereal, came a being that resembled a cross between an angel and a jellyfish. More species continued to arrive until the clearing held representatives of what Marcus estimated to be at least a dozen different intelligent life forms. Each one was unique in its evolutionary adaptations, yet all shared the same focused attention as they gathered around the crystalline communication hub. The leopard moved to Marcus's side and began a complex series of vocalizations that the communication system translated in real time. "I present the human Marcus, who saved my life without thought for his own safety. His species has unknowingly violated our territorial agreements, but they are not inherently hostile. I request consideration for a peaceful resolution." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Multiple voices spoke at once, creating a cacophony of translated concerns and accusations. The aquatic representative spoke of contaminated waters and failing life support systems in their underwater cities. The tree-like being complained of atmospheric changes that were disrupting the delicate chemical balance required for its species' survival. The winged creature reported that the electromagnetic emissions from human technology were interfering with the navigation systems that its people required for their aerial migrations. Marcus listened in growing despair as the full extent of humanity's unintentional damage became clear. The human colony wasn't just occupying contested territory, it was actively disrupting the ecological and technological systems that multiple alien civilizations depended upon for survival. No wonder the aquatic beings had been preparing for armed conflict. But, as the initial surge of complaints subsided, something remarkable happened. The Leopard's diplomatic intervention began to have an effect. One by one, the assembled representatives began to acknowledge that the human damage appeared to be unintentional rather than malicious. This distinction was apparently significant in their legal and moral framework. If the humans lack malicious intent, translated a voice that seemed to come from a being resembling a crystalline spider, then, perhaps education rather than elimination is the appropriate response. But, can they be trusted to modify their behavior once educated? Asked the aquatic representative. Their technology is primitive but destructive. How do we know they will not simply expand their harmful activities? Marcus realized that this was his moment to speak. He stepped forward, feeling the weight of every alien gaze focused upon him. The universal translator would convey his words, but would it also convey the sincerity and desperation behind them? My name is Marcus Chen, he began, his voice barely steady. I speak only for myself, not for all humanity, but I want you to know that my people are not conquerors or destroyers by nature. We came to Proxima 7 because our home world is dying, and we hope to find a place where we could build new lives without harming anyone. The translation system carried his words to the assembled aliens, and Marcus could see various forms of body language that suggested they were listening with serious attention. We didn't know you were here, he continued. Our surveys found no signs of intelligent life, no cities or technology that we could recognize. If we had known that this world was already home to so many remarkable civilizations, we would never have established our colony without permission. A new voice entered the conversation, coming from a being that appeared to be made of living metal. Ignorance may excuse the initial transgression, but what of the future? Will your species accept limitation and guidance to prevent further harm? This was the crucial question, and Marcus knew that his answer would determine the fate of every human on Proxima 7. He thought of his fellow colonists, 200 people who had traveled across the galaxy in search of a new home. They were scientists, engineers, farmers, and dreamers who had sacrificed everything for the chance to build a better future. But they were also human beings with all the flaws and limitations that implied. I believe they will, Marcus said finally. But I also know that change is difficult for my species. We will need guidance, patience, and probably time to make the necessary adjustments. What I can promise is that there are humans like me who will work tirelessly to bridge the gap between our peoples and find solutions that benefit everyone. The Leopard moved closer to Marcus and began speaking again. I propose a trial period, the translation system conveyed. Allow me to work with Marcus as a liaison between humanity and our various civilizations. If progress can be made, if the humans can demonstrate their willingness to adapt and coexist, then perhaps a permanent solution can be found. The debate that followed was intense and prolonged. Marcus watched in fascination as the different alien species engaged in diplomatic discourse that spanned philosophical, practical, and moral considerations. Some argued for immediate expulsion of the human colony, others suggested various forms of technological limitation, and still others proposed integration programs that would essentially place humanity under alien supervision. As the discussion continued, Marcus began to understand that he was witnessing something unprecedented in human experience. These alien civilizations had developed a truly functional system of interspecies cooperation. Despite their vast differences in biology, technology, and culture, they had found ways to share a planet without destroying each other or their shared environment. Finally, after what seemed like hours of debate, a consensus began to emerge. The crystalline spider being spoke for the group. We will accept the Leopard's proposal for a trial period of one planetary rotation. During this time, Marcus Chen will serve as the primary liaison between humanity and our collective civilizations. The human colony will be required to implement immediate changes to their technology and territorial occupation to minimize harm to indigenous systems. If satisfactory progress is demonstrated, added the aquatic representative, we will consider permanent integration protocols. If not, the humans will be required to evacuate Proxima 7 and seek their new home elsewhere. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and terror at this pronouncement. He had potentially saved the colony from immediate destruction, but he had also accepted responsibility for achieving something that might be impossible. How could he convince 200 humans to drastically alter their way of life based on the word of alien species they had never seen? As the gathering began to disperse, each alien representative pausing to communicate directly with Marcus through the translation system, he realized that his life had been fundamentally changed once again. He was no longer a xenobiologist studying alien life forms. He was humanity's ambassador to an entire planet of advanced civilizations, and the success or failure of human survival on Proxima 7 rested squarely on his shoulders. The Leopard remained beside him as the clearing emptied, its golden eyes reflecting an understanding of the enormous challenge that lay ahead. Together, they would have to return to the human colony and begin the delicate process of revealing the truth about Proxima 7 and convincing their fellow humans to embrace a completely new way of thinking about their place in the universe. As they prepared to leave the convergence point, Marcus took one last look at the crystalline communication hub. For thousands of years, it had facilitated peaceful cooperation between species that could have easily destroyed each other in warfare. Now it represented humanity's best hope for survival and growth beyond the confines of Earth. The morning sun was reaching its zenith as they began the journey back through the alien forest. Marcus walked beside his extraordinary companion, knowing that they carried the hopes and fears of two entire species. The drowning alien leopard he had rescued from Lake Kepler had become his closest friend and his greatest responsibility. Behind them, the crystalline spires continued their harmonic resonance, sending news of the morning's decisions to alien civilizations scattered across the planet. Humanity's trial period had officially begun, and Marcus Chen found himself at the center of the most important diplomatic mission in human history. The colony's morning routine was just beginning as they emerged from the forest, but Marcus knew that this would be the last normal day his fellow humans would experience. Tomorrow, everything would change as they learned the truth about their new home and began the challenging process of earning their place among the stars.